couldn't rectify certain theological principles. If everything is God and God made everything, and God made me, why am I so vile that I need sweeping clean? And I need some guy to die on a cross. I'm getting so teary. Yeah, and I really want to cry harder, but my Botox is really holding up right now. It's giving me a headache as my eyes are trying to crease in. Welcome to God, I Love You, a podcast for the woman who left the rules but kept the reverence.
We're Devany and Meredith, soul friends walking the messy, mystical, unapologetically feminine path.
We are done tidying our souls for anyone.
We start where it hurts and stay for the healing. We're so glad you're here. Welcome back to the GILY Pod. This is a bonus episode on welcome. And we are here because we wanted to extend to you what I often begin every circle with. And the Old English word for welcome means a desired guest, which I love. So essentially what we wanted to pause to say is that you're a desired guest here. And in the way of hospitality, we wanted to pause and offer some stories as to how both Meredith and I arrived to where we are. We've had wonderful feedback of, hey, could you guys tell us what you mean when you say embodiment, when you talk about the work, when where did you begin this journey? And it felt like a super easy yes. And we're glad that we've heard from you, that would be supportive.
Yeah, we are, we're two particular people. We have somewhat overlapping paths, and the timing was both disparate and similar at the same, as the journey has gone. And yeah, this episode is sort of a clarification of not just what we mean, but also we wanted to ground the podcast in our shared history. So whenever we say that we're going to miss something because this podcast is out of our own lens, you'll know what that lens is.
Mm-hmm.
And our guess is that you'll have some similar stories of upbringing or similar questions, or your path will intersect or will have intersected with ours in much the same way. And so this is foundation. This is this is where the pod was built, off of these lenses we're about to share with you.
And with that sense of welcome, it's a way for Meredith and I to welcome, like she said, our inside experience, our internal landscape into the external. And so we'll be talking to you about where we've come from and how we've arrived. And we hope that then invites your body, your soma, your mind, your heart to feel a sense of welcome. And it's important to you to hear us say, you are welcome. Your perspective, where you come from, what you know is welcome in this space as we offer you the same. So we're hoping it's, again, this theme of a permission slip, not to get it perfect, but to just kind of talk a little bit about our roots. So that's where we're going to start.
So in terms of format, we're going to it's not going to be as much of a conversational episode as is typical. I'll start explaining and sharing my roots, and then Devany will do hers, and then we'll sort of end on commonalities and the streams that we've both found ourselves in. So with that,
Mare's up.
I'm up. So I grew up in a very typical evangelical Christian home. And what that looked like was church at least 2 or 3 times a week. It looked like at-home curriculum, I'll say, for lack of a better word. My parents had truly an amazing community that provided them with resources and teachings. And my parents were very, very active in our spiritual upbringing and our, framing a lot of our boundaries and psyches. And both my sister and I feel so grateful to have had a lot of parental involvement. I'm saying this and all that is true. And I'm saying my parents had these resources, but what was most profound, I remember so much, was my mom every day would have, what we call evangelicals, the quiet time or
Mhm.
doing your devos. And she would
Mhm.
do that every single morning. And there would be some mornings when I would go in and ask her a question like, is my laundry done? Where's this? Whatever. And she would never get mad at me for interrupting her quiet time. But seeing my mom have that every single day was perhaps the most instructive teaching I have ever had. That's in my life as well.
Mm.
And similarly with my dad, when he would come home and tell stories. And now as a parent, I know that the act of storytelling for teaching is one of the best methods to teach our children. It's this academic approach is not very
Mhm.
useful all the time. But he would tell me stories about sort of like a conflict of morality or an ethical conflict that he had come across at work. And so
Hmm.
I learned these spiritual principles. I learned these ethical principles through my dad in that way. Um, Over time, I started to really have a dis-ease with a lot of the theology, and the dis-ease started first with just a not understanding. I couldn't rectify certain theological principles. Um, And that started at a really early age. A lot of that has to do with, like, savior theology.
Mhm.
Being saved from what? From
Mm.
what? Like, if everything is God and God made everything and God made me, why am I so vile,
Mm.
that I need sweeping clean and I need some guy to die on a cross? That just it still doesn't make sense to me. But there are these classic questions. What if someone on the other side of the world hadn't heard of Jesus Christ? How are they going to be saved? How is that fair? And what I found as I grew up and I asked these questions to people is that there was just such an air of certainty. And what I didn't know then that I know now is even though I couldn't rectify these concepts, I have a deep love and feel very comfortable in paradox.
Mm.
The not knowing. 2 things, 3 things, 4 things can be true. And what I kept receiving in these answers from people was certainty. And this certainty just felt bad, or the result of this, like the answers just felt like mean and cruel.
In many cases,
Um,
it was only one thing could be true,
right.
which was,
Only one thing.
yeah, direct conflict with your being.
Yeah. Yeah. And as a kid, I remember teenager, young adult I just used to love other cultures and going to not that this was all readily available where I grew up, but if there was a unique restaurant from a different cuisine, I was gonna find it. If there was a different type of dance studio, I found it. If there were fairs, like cultural fairs, I would go. I spent a lot of time going outside of my place because I was so curious and interested in all these other places and these other sets of beliefs.
Mm.
Um, and so by the time I was like a junior or senior in high school, I started to sort of pull out of my youth group that had been so foundational for me. I mean, all of my friends were in youth group, and that was because it was so easy to be with people who had shared beliefs. And it was so much easier for my soul to not have to grieve over the quote sins of other people. And it was just this like very cozy place of community, even though we were being so ostracizing to other people. And we were using our Christian quote faith and morality to separate ourselves,
Mm.
using the scripture, "Be in the world and not of it." And
Mm.
that was interpreted in a certain way that was very exclusionary. I feel like at this point, I must say that everyone was doing their best at the time. And I
Yeah.
have had so many moments, like deepening moments, time after time. It gets a little bit deeper of letting go of the massive amounts of anger and frustration that I held at the evangelical church. Um, but we were all operating in, you know, in what we could handle at the time.
For sure.
So I start questioning. I sort of disengage a little bit. However, I decide to go to Baylor University, which is a conservative Baptist university
I'm just so
in the
glad you
middle of
did.
Texas. It's where I met Devany. It's where we heard each other's siren song, and we're not, at the time we just know we liked each other and we had
Yeah.
an instant magnetism
Yeah.
to one another. But we were not deep into the theology yet and all of
No.
this. But there is when I really started to separate. My Baylor experience was not like the majority of people at Baylor. Um, Baylor does an incredible job at making sure their students feel loved, and and it's remarkable because I did feel loved even though I felt very different. Um, but that became a big indication. It's so funny here I live in Austin, and there's a lot of Baylor people around me, and they're always like, "Did you know this person? Did you know that person?" And every time it's a no because I was really reclusive. I didn't have like that cool Baylor experience that many people did. So I started to become more me, and actually more me became more separate. And after
Mm.
college, I had a span of, I don't know, 12, 13, 14 years where I just dropped the church totally. I couldn't abide it. It did not feel right in my body. I felt uncomfortable going into a church. Um, that's not to say I didn't try.
Yeah.
I craved the community again, but something just wasn't sitting well.
Mm.
And during that time, I started to take interest in stuff that I always kind of had taken interest in, like astrology, and received a couple energy healings. Started to understand the invisible world a little bit at a very nascent level. And and then, I got married. I married a Jewish man. Um and that made some ripples in the pond.
Yeah.
That made some ripples in the pond. But it was very clear to me. It's like I received a very loud and deep knowing that this was the partner for me.
Yeah. You did. I remember.
Oh, man. I knew he was mine before I even met him. I had heard of him.
Yes, you knew after you heard his name.
Yes. Yes. It was a fated, just fated. We were meant for each other. So we get married. We have a beautiful interfaith ceremony. Um, and we have kids. And after my second kid, I let's see, I had kids 17 months apart, so that is intense no matter who you are,
Oof.
but especially for my kind of personality, which is pretty mega type B,
Mm.
uh, also in the first place, feeling like I wasn't cut out for motherhood at the start of it, and now having
Mm.
2 kids, 2 under
Yes.
2, I descended into a mega, mega depression, postpartum, everything, and just really, really got into the deep dark. And it started slowly, these feelings of losing freedom and losing autonomy and my own self-authority, all of these things that I knew were important, but I didn't know that those were my North Stars at the time,
Mhm.
really started to weigh in on me. And it ended in this big, messy, beautiful
Mm.
breakdown
Mm.
where my my sweet husband found me crying on the bathroom floor. And offered me the gift of space and a week to go to the Arizona desert and just unfold and fall apart. And it was such a gift because he had to cancel his favorite soul-enriching trip that was gonna be that week, and that's sorta how I knew. It's nice to have a mirror. That's how I knew this was a big deal. Obviously, I was on the floor, but, you never sometimes you can't trust your own reactions, or you think you
Yeah.
can't trust your own reactions, and that was the space I was in, is this non-trustworthiness space. And, so I went, and for 6 days, I cried my eyes out. I journaled nonstop. I woke up every morning before sunrise and walked a labyrinth and allowed it to wake with the sun, and the thoughts just came flooding out, and I realized, walking in circles and circles and circles, that I had been borrowing someone else's motherhood. And this fundamentalist primary belief of not believing in myself and doubting that I could even be a good mother had exploded into this mess, and also this psychology of, well, if I don't think I'm a good mother, who is a good mom? And so I borrowed my mom's motherhood, and I borrowed Instagram's motherhood. And at the time of the breakdown, it was this very clear message of, that is not you. You as a mother are snarky. It's funny. You as a mother are deeply kind and intuitive. You as a mother
You're so
get ragey.
patient.
You as a mother, it's like all these other aspects of me and the parts of my personality that I realized, oh, they get to be here and they get to also, have a say. So I dissected my life for that week.
And I remember that, Meredith. I know
Oh,
you weren't going to interrupt too much, but I remember I have tears because I think Aaron's deep love of you to say, like, having 2 under 2 so quickly, it just, you also have such a and I mean delicate in a very strong way, but a very delicate, energetic composition, that being flooded by 2 beings coming out of your body and then existing in proximity to your body, you already have such a it's one of the things I've always just been so grateful for about you is this, you have a very gentle, energetic field. It's very healing to be your friend and to be held by something and by someone so gentle and one who can see and hold 5,000 truths at once. But how quick the 2 kids came, and I just felt like you were so much more, like I see a membrane, like of a cocoon, and it was just like paper thin. Like, where did you end and where did they begin, and who were you? And even when you said, like, I don't know if I was trustworthy, as you were talking about all the years leading up to it, where there was another voice and there was like a right way to do things and a very clear answer to everything, that what that almost produced to you in some degree as your friend at that time was that you didn't trust yourself. Uh, it was this great, oh, it makes me cry though, because I think I think that was beautiful how you said it, of the mirror that he had of like, oh, you need space to go remember who you are, because, you know, as much as
mm,
I love you, he loves you that much more, like in a different way of
yeah.
like, he knows you, he sees you. And like to have felt like you didn't know who you were was very shocking to those that love you dearly. And yet it was so brave and of you to go, and um, of no surprise that you remembered very quickly. I mean, it came back. I mean, what is time? But it was that unfolding brought you back to your center in a way.
God, I'm like getting so teary.
Yeah.
And I really want to cry harder, but my Botox is really holding up right now. It's giving me a headache because my eyes are trying to crease in.
I'll cry for you.
Cry for me. I'm like, the tears are coming down, but my forehead's doing nothing.
Oh.
Yeah. Thanks for that reflection, Deb. That's very to be seen. I received a lot of energy healing that week by a local woman, and she just blew the doors wide open.
Mm.
And like in session, I would just be crying and screaming, and it was so instructive. I mean, it's instructive for me today as an energy worker, because I always tell people when they lay down on the table, all of you is welcome here. Thank you, Adrienne Johnson, for that phrasing. Your screams, your tears, your growls,
Mm.
your weird movements, nothing is weird. I know in my own body and firsthand how helpful it is to move your energy around. And even better, to move it around with someone who's helping you move it around it's such a clearing and fast, sweeping way to get it the fuck out.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of these sessions, though, my practitioner said, "I work with Jesus." And I was like, "What?" Because at the time, I always have truly respected Jesus and knew something was different about him than what I had been taught.
Mm-hmm.
But that sort of like, I felt a little discordant in me, and I realized then that like, oh, the Jesus she's talking about is a different Jesus than the one that I know.
Mm-hmm.
And I also had this example of someone doing energy work who was buddy with Jesus. And so that was an interesting just an interesting marker at the time. Didn't know what to do with it. The last day of that week, I was journaling, and it hit me like a flood that your work now is to go become like village healer. And I use healer very loosely. We heal each other. We heal ourselves. It's not like someone's job to heal you. We're all very active participants in that. But so I came back home. A couple months later, I learned Reiki, which is it's an energy movement technique using life force energy, the chi, the prana. And then a couple months after that, this was 2020, and as the world was shut down, I took a shamanism extended, like for the year of 2020, a shamanism course through the Four Winds, who work with the Andean tribes, specifically the 𝐂𝐫𝐞, who have offered the Western world with tools. Some of their tools, of course, many of them need to be kept in their own, in their own society and culture. Tools to borrow until we found our own lineages and could use our own tools. And that those two learnings just moved me into a whole different world of perception. Now I could revisit Christianity, and this didn't happen still for a couple more years. I could revisit Christianity with a different understanding.
But 2020 is when we started book club. So you were in online shaman school, and we were reading The Universal Christ. We were reading, we read 𝐂𝐨𝐬 books. We read,
Untamed. Even we read Untamed.
Untamed. We read The Way of Integrity by Beth. Like we read, what is her name?
We read Eye of the Heart too. Was that
Eye of the Heart? And we read The Wisdom Jesus.
Yes, Wisdom Jesus. Yeah, Cynthia Bourgeault. Yeah. We started getting in the down deep. I mean, 2020 was an amazing year to start book club, to go to shaman school, because everything around us was unraveling. All these systems were unraveling. So the availability of wisdom and knowledge were just, they came in like tidal waves.
Yeah.
And you also introduced me then to centering prayer.
That's right.
And I kind of danced around it for a year. It was a year. I danced around it for a year. We moved houses, and driving on the way to my house, I found or saw, I knew it was there, but now it was really close to my house. I saw this church community that whose like one of their legs is centering prayer. And you just don't hear about that. You
No.
just don't. It doesn't exist. It also is a place that studies the fourth way, which is you've heard us mention this. This is 𝐂𝐨𝐦𝐿's compilation of systems, and it's called the fourth way because it's probably I'm sure this existed before he put this together. This was like 1920s, 30s, I think, time, whatever. But before, there's like a body-based system, like the fakir, in it's used by it's enlightenment by discipline and endurance and struggle, like laying on nails, renouncing your physical comforts. It's doing it the hard way. There was the way of enlightenment by the monk, which is the heart-based way, emotions, moving all of your spiritual energy towards God, faith, devotion, surrender. Monkey stuff, Then there was
not like a monkey,
yeah.
like a monkey in a zoo.
Monk. The things, the guys who brew beer.
In the monasteries.
The
monastic life. There it is. I heard monkey.
The monastic life.
But I'm tracking.
And then there was an intellectual-based way, which is the way of the yogi, and with meditation, study, concentration, mastery over thoughts. And the fourth way is all of those. And so this community out here in Austin, the whole idea is to be monks out in the world, is to incorporate all of these systems. There's so much emphasis on the intellectual center, the emotional center, and the instinctual moving center. All of these things working together to create some sort of momentum and synergy, and even just moments. And so I walked into that church, and I was telling you this all the time, like, people there have clear eyes.
Yep.
Like literally clear eyes. I'm not saying like they see things clearly. Their eyes were literally clear. And that was really remarkable. They hold your gaze. There is a sense of acceptance and calmness there. And that was like, oh, this is the Christianity that I've been looking for.
And awake.
This is what?
And awake. It was calm,
awake.
They're clear, but awake. So awake. Like their whole being was like online. I came to a church service once. I'm like, I don't know if let's test Mary's theory. Of course, I believed her, but I was intrigued, and I walked in and some older population, which all to say, like, sometimes I'm imagining when I get older, I'm going to just feel more like clouded and tired. That's something I'm assuming of myself. Like but to see these folks in your church, like the clearest eyes. I was astounded. It's
astounded. True. And it's very clearly, they cuss, they drink, they eat food, and they also have God devotion at the center of their life. And God devotion just means something totally different. And so I've spent the last several years learning what that means, and recalibrating what Christianity is for me. And that has been just so momentous in my life. It's been such a relief to make it an inside job. And for me, I entered into that world intellectually. And we talked about this in an earlier episode. And it's not unusual for people in our Western culture to first think their way through it. And for me, I'm so glad I did, because the first thing that I noticed was the quality of my thoughts, the subject of my thoughts. So much of the work Gurdjieff's work is about self-observation, and that starts with observing what's going on in the mind. And after self-observation, there's non-identification, where you understand that that's not me, that's not the real me, but it is something that's moving through my brain.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is self-remembering, which is when we remember that our trueness, our real I, our essence is God.
Mm.
Again, the Big Bang, right? God exploded itself into all of these fractals, and we are one of them. So are we all God? Like, are we the fullness of all God? No, we're a piece of God. And that's the main thing. And keeping the main thing, the main thing. That's the main thing. And so we can release a lot of the attachment to, the shame that came up when I was like, oh, I'm really messing up my kids. Oh, I'm a bad partner. Oh, I can't get anything done. Oh, all the stuff that leads to these breakdowns and whatever else, you know, when you remember that you're a piece of God. Okay, that changes
Mm.
the narrative. That changes the narrative. So
And
that's how I got here. It's a very long way. Hope you're here.
I felt like it was very
Uh,
succinct. By no means is my story going to flow so succinctly in the way, though, of like, I really do appreciate, I watched you enter it from an intellectual, psychological entry point. And I remember, like, I did the journey school with you online through your church early on. One of the things I've really valued of our relationship, and one of my core values I'm discovering, is relationship. Of I was able to learn with you through that, while also
yeah.
at times being like, Mare, I don't get it. Or Mare, this feels like super in the head and my body doesn't know what to do with it. And you're like, it is in the head. And that what we learned about each other in that moment, for you, your entry point into your inner journey came through the psychological like entry point. Um, and I think at the time I was just along for the ride. And now, gosh, 4 or 5 years in, I feel really grateful for the uniqueness of you, that I was able to experience an inner journey through the psychological entry point, while moving in through mine, like a lot more through my body. But it was so beautiful just to see that it didn't have to all be the same, you know?
Oh, wow. I mean, is that not the perfect way to bring it full circle? With it's not the same, and we started at the frustration of certainty, and
Yeah.
everything has to be the same. There's one answer.
Mm,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
we are each of us a multiplicity of beings, and so we don't know. We don't know which piece of us is going to be like, "Oh, it's me. I wanna access through that part." Yeah.
Yes. And I finally came back around to the work. I mean, just this year, this May, I went on a retreat through Cynthia Bourgeau's like introductory wisdom school. And one of her kind of pillars of the wisdom work that she does is incorporates the work alongside centering prayer, alongside Christian monasticism, and out of the
Oh,
wisdom lineage. Like, so she teaches out of a lot of like the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary, some of these uncanonized.
yeah.
But I went and I was suddenly, this is what I love about our friendship, is there's always this, I like will be exposed to something and then I'll loop around a couple years later and be like, I get it now. Like I was there and I'm like, this is why Meredith has devoted 5 years of her life to this. Like I understand now how this framework of the fourth way work is a way of awakening your being to how alive we can be.
Ugh.
Oh, this is why
That is
Meredith
it's
devoted.
so how our friendship works. Devany's usually it's Devany is always at the forefront. She's like, I'm really interested in this thing. And I go, oh, okay, not for me. And then inevitably, a year or two later, I'm like, oh my God, that thing.
I will say though, as you were telling the story, I actually think typically I will find a thing first, typically. But even as you were telling the story, you're stepping away from church and then deconstructing like church and deconstructing the evangelical framework happened first. Because interestingly, as I begin to share my story, like I entered the evangelical church